Hello there, Bic Benedict here. We're playing Ryse, Son of Rome on the PC on Legendary difficulty, and this is my no damage, no upgrade guide and walkthrough. We're currently on Chapter 3 of 8. It is entitled Trial by Fire, and this is probably one of the chapters that has the most difficult parts on it, just because they're kind of awkward, and some of them are quite long, and while there are definitely some difficulty spikes later in the game, this chapter is, it just has some troubling sections, so hopefully we can get you through that. So at the beginning of the chapter, you don't have your pilas, as I mentioned in the last video. You don't have them quite yet. You'll get them pretty soon. You'll get them back. But so if you are going through this and you haven't cleared the game yet, you'll be introduced to well, you're introduced to them anyway, even if you're on Legendary difficulty. I'm talking about the charge attacks. So the one of these parts actually was making me quite mad, and I have no problems saying, where I was having problems on different parts, because some of the sections they just really grate on my nerves, and it's kind of unfortunate because I would count about 3 sections in this chapter that are like that, but the first one that's coming up is really not that bad because it has a great checkpoint. It's just that when I'm doing a walkthrough, I like to have the least amount of edits in the video as possible. But when sections are so challenging that you definitely don't want to restart the chapter just so that you can try to get the cleanest look possible, just because it's just aggravating. So anytime you see a circle on the screen, it means that enemies are shooting arrows at you, specifically the archers. Now this is one of those parts that is kind of aggravating, but it's not one of the difficulty spikes of this chapter. It's just introducing you to those enemies, and if you press the deflect button, A or whatever you have it mapped to, you can deflect the arrows, but normally whenever I deflect an arrow, it's out of pure accident, because they come at you so fast, and there really is pretty poor indication of when they're coming, because that signal on the screen, it could be coming from anywhere. It just has the icon. It doesn't have a direction of where it's coming from. So when you jump down here, though, the first enemy, if you quickly press the right trigger, you can get an execution on him. This fight can be problematic too, and I don't really know why either. It's just I think there's multiple waves, and for some reason, just odd and bad things can happen sometimes. When, say for instance, you're going in for an execution and you have that red icon over one of them, and you go in for the execution, but the icon fades, and you're presuming that you're going to be going into an execution, and then you've just pressed the button too late, and then you are not in the comfortability of the iframes, so that somebody hits you. And you never want to be in the middle of too many enemies, because some of these enemies, they will do attacks that are pretty fast, and that jumping attack too is really dangerous. But yeah, for some reason I've had problems on this part. For some reason, I'm not sure why in the past, but this time it was not a big deal. It's the next part that's kind of aggravating, because and admittedly it has a great checkpoint, so it's not a matter about that. It's just that I do try to have the cleanest footage possible, but it's just sometimes it's not possible. So when the fight is done, there could be some pilas around. There's going to be some coming up over here, but the problem over here is that you have a decision to make. Do you want to close in the distance and go nearest to the wall where the archers are standing atop to get out of their range? The problem about that is that they will come down the stairs and reposition, so that could be a problem. And then aiming around corners over here is kind of difficult because of the fact that you can clip on things, and your pila might just go right into the geometry. So what I do is I try to hit some of the archers at first, and then I close in the distance and come up here. Now, the thing about archers is that they can be kind of random, because if you run up to an archer, what they do, kind of like in God of War, they'll put their bow away and do knife combat with, or sword combat. But sometimes they will just fire arrows at you from a repositioned location that they've gone to, and that could happen over here. So I also don't think that putting them off of the screen gives you complete worry-free situations, because I think that that just doesn't work all the time. It can work, and I do try to do that, because this next section, there's also right here, it's kind of funny. I hit this, I got the checkpoint, but the instant I got the checkpoint, right after, like a second later or less, I got hit. So I did get the checkpoint, but I got hit, so I had to put in an edit there. Now, when you're doing this scenario here, all you need to do is just approach and block, I believe, 3 times. Now, on these sections here, I don't tolerate damage. So if I get hit on these, I reset. But normally, when you're doing these scenarios, you're going to be throwing swords at the enemies. But on that one, you don't have to. You might not even be able to, but the thing is, you don't have to. And then they'll retreat after 3 blocks. But yeah, this is one of the worst parts over here. And you might not even have it be worse, but it's coming up right over here. Here's that notorious part coming up. Yeah, I try in vain to hit these guys as they're running up, but it never usually works. So at first you have 2 of these guys to the right, and then over to the left. Anytime you see that upside down triangle insignia, that red insignia, those ones there, that means that there's archers over there. So if we can get this fucking message out of the way, it would be really nice. But once that first wave is done, it's going to ask you to hit these 2 levers on this chain here. And after you do it, if you want to, you can hit this exploding barrel there. But I don't think it explodes in time enough so that it does anything. But I like to think that it does. And this is just a situation of a lot of waves of enemies, pretty poor visibility, and then archers that can't really make up their minds about what they want to do. What they tend to do is that they will go to their post, and they're firing arrows down at your men. But sometimes, like I've said earlier in the video, they like to not do that and stop doing that and then turn around and shoot you. So a good idea is to throw the pilas as quickly as you can at those archers. But they if you can get that middle piece of the room in between you and them, and then just focus on these enemies over here, you should have success. This is not hard, it's just stressful. And this is it's really not, it's not bad, but I'm just saying it's not at all easy. It's just, it really, I don't know, this part is, there's just a lot of enemies. Now, coming up pretty soon, there's going to be a section that, if you're doing a walkthrough like this, or a run, it's one of those parts that it's the prime example of an area that could force you to to quit out and just quit and not play the game anymore. It's really bad. It's out of your hands, and you're in a shooting gallery pretty much, and it's a very luck based situation, at least for no damage. And the restrictions on the Pilas, us having just 4, makes it pretty bad. But even worse is the firing of these of the Pilas, and it doesn't work as well as it should. Now, where it says barbarians are killing your men at the gate, don't worry about that. It would be nice if all of this text could get out of the way so that we can, have an unobstructed view of what we're doing over here. But we've got more archers over to the left, and look at this. It's just, we got too close to the wall over there. But now we have those archers, and look what they're doing. They're firing down over there. So if you charge them, just be careful. It would have been nice if I had some indication of the other enemies just charging me there off screen. I had see the circular indication. The archers are firing at me over here. So if you are doing this, just beware. And if you want to prioritize those archers, definitely do it. And if you need to, put the damage boost on. I didn't want to put it on over here because it's not a situation where you have to have it, and I just didn't want to rely on it. And also the damage boost, it doesn't. Do you know how the damage boost will help with your combat, but it doesn't increase the damage that you do with the Pilas. So it would be nice if that was true, but it's just not the case. It would be especially nice on the shooting gallery coming up over here. And it looks like we're done. So we've got another a beach combat over here to do, and this is basically nothing. It's nothing to speak of. Now, on that part coming up, it's really awful, and I don't know if it's what I think it's. I think it's one part time based and one part kill X number of enemies, and also at the same time do it in such a way that you're doing it quickly enough and killing enemies quickly enough so that your teammates, I'm sorry, teammates, that's a strange word to say, but your men don't get so besieged by the firing of the archers, and that they don't get killed. So I've got a decent way of doing this. How long did this take me? It was a good hour, hour and 15 minutes. But at the very least, it was an hour. And I was very upset. I've done this before because I did no damage on it before. But on that one, I used upgrades, and I had 8 Pilas. But it doesn't really... well, I guess having more Pilas is better, but having to pick them up, and the shitty detection when you go up to the pile of Pilas, and when you press A, instead of picking them up, he does that stupid taunt instead. But it is nice, though, that the deflect button is also A, so a lot of times you'll probably accidentally parry the projectiles and save yourself from getting hit. But at first, because this is going to go pretty quick, and forgive me for speaking over this, but as I say, this is not important because the next part is just complete BS. There's going to be 2 archers, like when you immediately start, there's going to be 2 archers ahead of you and to the right. Now, you'll want to take them out. They're of no threat to you. They can't hit you. But try to aim as accurately as you can, and it's going to take 4 Pila Pila's to kill them, and in all likelihood, you're probably going to miss, just because the archers are moving, and the accuracy, even when you hold the button down and it's red, meaning that it should be as accurate as possible, it just misses because the game is imperfect, and it really shows with the Pilas. It could have done with some overhauling. But once you're out of the Pila, what you want to do is, there are about 3 or 4 on the platform that you start out on, and you want to be firing at the archers to the left. Now, there is a pile of infinite Pila on the ground ahead of you. If you want to pick those up, that would be the best thing to do. But you have to bear in mind that anytime you're just running around this small area with archers aiming down on you, you're completely vulnerable. So you want to be rolling and always spamming that A button to pick up the Pila, and also hopefully trying to deflect anything that's coming at you. It's unfortunate that you have to rely on accidental parrying to stay alive, but sometimes that's what happens. So just get as close to these guys as you can, because the closer you are, the more Pila you'll be able to throw at these guys. So here's that notorious part coming up over here. Yeah, it's really bad, and one of the worst things too is that there's a little scene that you have to watch every time that you do this. But remember, the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you come here with your Pilas maxed out, however much your quantity is that you're doing, and it's the archers ahead of you and then to the right. They cannot hit you, but try to be as accurate as you can. And remember, you have to do this pretty quickly. At the end, there's going to be more archers on this building over to the right, but we'll talk about them when we get there. So 4 shots will take them out, and then pick up all of the Pila up here, and then you're going to be aiming around these barrels here, and try to get these enemies so that when you're firing the Pilas at them, make sure that they're kind of stacked on one another, because then you can get multiple kills. But we're going to shortly be out of the Pilas, so we're going to jump down here, roll over to this pile here that's the infinite pile, and then these 2 up here, if you stay down right here, they won't ever fire at you, and it's pretty decent. But you need to do this quickly, and the reason being, behind you, those archers that I mentioned a moment ago, they're going to spawn on the building. So you don't want to be on this side when that happens, because they're going to aim right at you. See, they're setting up right there. Now, help is coming, and it's going to say that the morale is falling. But at this point, if you've killed the number of enemies that I've shown you, it should just be 1 more enemy that you need to have. And unfortunately, I don't believe that you can wait this out, because if you haven't killed the requisite number of enemies, it's just not going to work. So at the end it says fire volley, and I accidentally activated focus mode, because I have the left bumper assigned to deflect. So I'm not sure what button it was to activate the volley. I think it's right bumper. So that was a mistake that I made there. But finally got the checkpoint there. Hope that goes well for you. But it's just a matter of luck and BS. It's just absolutely horrible. It's despicable. It's probably the hardest part in the game and the run, for sure. It's really unfortunate the way that is. I've always really disliked that part intensely. So after that fight, there's going to be an option for you about what you want to do as far as selecting a choice here. Now, I've picked the one that gives no melee support, because at this point you've had a lot of tutorials about the combat and how to survive using the combat. And the bad thing too about the other choice is that you could have projectiles being fired at you. So we've definitely had enough of that nonsense. So I'm not going to include both paths, but I would just say whatever path you want to do, just choose it, because you're going to have a nice checkpoint there. So after all that, you can pick up Pylas from that infinite bundle there. They should be in the same spot back there. I'm not going to go back there, but we do have another couple of confrontations to do. There's one sequence at the there's a couple at the end that has a pretty awful checkpoint. Any checkpoint that is preceded by a cutscene that you have to watch every time is always the worst, and it's like that for the final boss too. For one of her phases, the first phase, that it becomes it's not a matter of beating the boss. It's coping with the horror of having to watch a cutscene every time, and or run to somewhere and then watch a cutscene, as in the case of the final boss. So that's always just really bad that things like that happen. That you're really not worried about doing the fight. It's just, how am I going to deal with repeatedly having to watch the same thing over and over and over again? And I could have made it easier for myself. I used the Pylas in a place that if I had reconsidered it, I wouldn't have done it. So when you are fighting the group of enemies at the end with the warlord, I would recommend having the Pylas for that fight, because there's that cutscene that you have to watch every time. So if you are struggling with it, definitely save the Pylas for that, because there's not an infinite stack of them, and there's also there's not an infinite stack over here either. But because the game forces you to use the Pylas over here to hit a mechanism to open this gate up here, I would assume that these Pylas keep respawning over here, but there's only one at a time, so it's kind of frustrating. And then you have a group of archers up here that if you charge them and then go up on that platform, you can do a regular fight, which is what we're going to do. But the moment that they're all dead... Oh, there is a pile up here. There's a pile up here? Okay, I didn't remember that there is a pile up here. So it's in a bad spot though, because the moment these enemies are all dead, this is like the location I'm in now is a bad place to be, because while you're trying to hit the gate down, there's two bastards on top of it that can cause you trouble, and I don't think there's a better place to stand than over here, because you can hit this, and then those enemies up there can't hit you. But if you are going to run back and get more Pylas, just be aware that they can be firing at you, as they are right here. But you don't have to kill them. And as you're running to this next checkpoint over here, I'm not sure what all of this nonsense is. I don't know if that's spectacle or if you can get hit by that. But I would just be careful, because you don't quite have a checkpoint until you get to over here. And then you've got a pretty... See, this checkpoint over here too, every time that you restart it, you have to do that slow walking. I really wish they wouldn't put that in games. That slow walking shit, it's just really obnoxious. It's in like every new game. But you have a pretty big battle out here, and then once it's done, you're going to be going on a turret, but you don't have a checkpoint quite yet. So it's just a regular group of enemies over here, and at some point there will be some AoEs on the ground for you to dodge, but I don't think this is the point at which that happens quite yet. I remember this is pretty rough over here because you have that slow walking nonsense, and then you're doing this, but you don't quite have a checkpoint. So just approach this. There's the checkpoint. Okay, and then you are going to get another checkpoint over here, but you have to interact with the turret and then get off that, then do a fight. So this is pretty routine and easy, but sometimes the auto targeting doesn't lock on properly because these guys keep moving around. But once you've killed everybody, it's going to lock you into this cutscene over here, and you're going to have a group of enemies to deal with over here. And here is where the AoEs are going to be a problem for you. However, if you stay in this location over here to the left, usually they don't come over here, so it's a really good spot to stand. If you go over to the right, you're going to be having those AoEs to deal with. And you do get complete iframes when you're doing the executions, but the second they stop and you're out of the execution, if you're over an AoE, you could get hit by it. But over here, you didn't even see the AoEs. And this is a bad idea to use the Pylus here. Bad idea, because these enemies are not hard to deal with, and even though they're being a little bit of evasive, you're going to have a pretty big group to deal with. And the Warlord is essentially a heavy with a deceptively slow attack that has to be perfect deflected. If you don't want to mess with it, you can just do charge attacks on him. That would be a good idea. And then use the Pylas on the enemies. 4 Pylas, it would be great, but I just had none, so it was unfortunate. I did put the damage boost on over here, but as you can see, it starts with, it says damage boost +0. So until you start doing executions and raising that number, I don't believe that the damage boost kicks in. So you have to start earn it, earn some of those numbers before you actually start to see a damage boost. That would be my guess, because what else could damage boost +0 mean at this point? So we'll start raising that number, +25, and even these arbitrary numbers, I have no idea, how that equates to anything, but just roll out of the way of the Warlord's attacks as much as you can, and just remember that when enemies are attacking with different speeds of attacks and things like that, you can't be blocking more than one thing. So you need to individualize these enemies as much as possible. Break the guard of the Warlord when you get a chance. You probably are going to be saving him for last. Just because of his HP threshold is probably a little bit higher than these other enemies. So once everybody is dead, though, if you don't want to fool around with his attack and perfect deflect it, you can just roll out of the way of his attacks, and these heavy attacks are going to pay you dividends because they're really good. See, that was his attack right there. That's not as it is with the other heavies, which is a speed that you're accustomed to, and then they kind of throw you a curve over on that one. But I will see you in the next video. Please take care.